This is the Richmond Parking Advisory Committee. What's the date? March 24th. Who's running the agenda? Who's running the
Oh, yeah, here. Good, here. Sorry, the bottom.
All right.
Actually, do.
So, welcome, and we'd like to get if there are any comments from the public.
I have an email I'd like to share. Is this okay?
Sure.
Do you know who
Everybody good? Yeah.
Fran Thomas wrote me a quick email. Does anyone know who Fran Thomas is?
Yes.
She does that. Hi, Diane. Dave, that's her husband. Dave and I and our son walk on Dugway Road every now and then for a change of pace. We notice all the parking related signs. One sign says that there is a new parking ordinance. One sign that says that there is a new parking ordinance could be more helpful to visitors if it had a QR code or a website link to the ordinance. Just a thought. I thought, oh.
My son said the same thing, so I agree with that.
Yeah, so I thought it was a great idea. Wanted to share it.
Is that something we could do on our own? Just like we could get some, I could print vinyl.
It's the sign that's way down by Orchard Terrace, by Orchard, whatever it is, and Charlie pointed the same thing. He said, "Great, you got a new ordinance, but I have no idea what it is."
Do we need permission to do that, or can we just stick it on the sign?
Well, I think
How would you going to generate a sticker or something?
I'll do a vinyl waterproof sticker with QR code.
I think that would be.
it could be.
I would run it by Pete, but I think that would be
Yeah,
acceptable.
I think Pete would have to, and we should probably,
And yeah, you're gonna explain what it is.
yes, and
And I'm gonna several in case. it
we
gets-
may want, to read the ordinance. Sometimes it sounds a little stilted to just like somebody coming, you know what I mean by that? It might be better to put it in words from this sign up to 2 miles. No parking on the upward hillside or whatever.
Maybe worded in such a way that that same QR can go on each
Each
end of the
end.
corridor itself.
Oh,
Yeah.
would it be the same? I think it would be the same, right? It wouldn't have to be-
That's what I'm saying, worded in such a way that it transcends wherever you are.
Would you guys like, John and I can take a pass at it, we can pass it around to see
Okay.
if you think the QR code.
Or link right to the ordinance, or whatever you want to do.
I have a question. If we did it just at the ends, is there any intermediate place that, I mean, since this will be easy to do? Would there be any
There is
reason?
the middle, there's that one sign that goes either direction.
Both ways, by the
Yeah.
culvert.
Yeah, if we, with the words correctly, we could do that.
Let's start with the Pete conversation and then go from there.
All right. So you, am
How
I?
about you and I,
Okay.
we'll do that, we'll pass it through the group. And then we'll pass it to Pete.
That's a good idea. All right, I've not seen any dial-ins. So it's 6:04. Yeah, so additions to deletions to the agenda, I know that our son, so. John,
I don't have any because
oh, it's already on.
it's already on there.
Chuck, do my pen just ran
Any
out
other?
of ink. Can I use your other pen?
Any other changes, additions, deletions to the agenda? All right, so we are a little ahead of schedule. Let's go into it. So I know that this is a hot topic. So the discussion of Town of Richmond Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest Policy. And coincidentally, Duncan had sent out that document just as a review. I think before this conversation. So it's interesting to read. So
Can I start?
please.
So I had been thinking about this back in 2022. I had texted Diane about this subject. I had an email with Josh about the subject, and so I was thinking about it again, that I'm not sure Chuck was on the committee, Matt wasn't on the committee. And then Duncan sent out this while I had been thinking about it, and I learned that the state has created a statewide municipal code of ethics that applies to Richmond. And then Richmond, which is allowed to have more stringent rules if they want to, modified a week ago tonight their existing rules. And I could be wrong on this, and I have it printed and it's hard to completely understand. I think it differs from the state in that us, an advisory board, are subject to it, whereas with the state policy, which has been strengthened by the municipal one, would not apply to us. And then the other thing that I think I'm understanding is it says that when Diane and I had texted, when Josh and I had an email, the thought was, if you had a conflict of interest, what you would do is you would engage in the discussion, but you would abstain from voting. But wording I'm here reading here, if it applies, shall recuse themselves from any decision-making process involved in. We are not reading it, the right one, that contract. I think it says that you're not even supposed to be part of the discussion. And I took the training online, and that was my understanding, that you would not only not vote, but you would sit out the discussion. And I'm having trouble finding the wording here that says that.
Transcript.
So it says, so our committee, like all the committees and all have these two things to do, which Sean's saying, the online one and then
Yeah,
which we all are obliged to do and sign off on. It just got sent a couple days ago, so we may not have all had the opportunity
yes,
to review all of it yet. There's a lot of legalese. I was hoping for Matt to help with some of the legalese with the wording of it. I have read it a couple of times in various places. And I think I understand stuff. Are you asking so that's one thing that we all have to do. That's
right, and also, we're supposed to have a meeting, include this in the agenda at some point, according to
Yes.
Duncan. And I don't know that this short conversation now will fulfill that requirement, which he's going to notify us of in June.
I did notice it's already on some other meetings agenda.
Yeah, yes.
So the question I had was, who determines the conflict of interest?
We're talking math.
So I sat through the YouTube video that's 45 minutes long. And so I think you're allowed to, and also there's appearance of conflict of interest, but that you can first exclude yourself out and announce, I have a conflict of interest. And sit out, as I understand it, sit out the discussion.
Agreed.
Or there's a possible way that someone can say, wait, you have a conflict of interest. I think you should sit it out. And then there's also the opportunity to contact the state's ethics commission and say, I
Yes.
don't know if I have a conflict of interest, and through a confidential review, they will give you their opinion as to whether you do or not.
So the question I would have for the lawyers in the group, and maybe even Josh, is when I got to John Delaka, I wish they put numbers on these on page 3. It looks like it has C at the top, page 3.
Yeah.
Any individual who holds position of or exercises the function of any of the following positions or on behalf of any municipality. We're not on there.
But there's D.
And there's D, and then I have a question on that too. So does that mean? Yeah, so I couldn't quite. Yes, I kept going back and forth, like, how do you determine? Is it so? Yeah. The thing that I keep getting caught up with is advisory committee, and the only one they have is like the advisory budget committee member, and that's to do with financial. I just felt like there wasn't, the stakes of advisory in our committee is not a holder of power.
Right, and so what my current assumption, interpretation, which could be wrong, and I'm not saying the town made the right decision, if this is in fact the decision it made, that if there was a question about parking in front of Chuck's house, that he arguably should say, I have a conflict of interest and not take further action on the matter or participate in any way to or act to influence the decision regarding the matter.
I agree.
I'm reading that.
I agree with that.
But this is somewhat new,
Yeah,
because the added part of this is, so when Denise proposed the pickleball court.
Yeah,
I took part in the conversation,
yeah,
but refused myself from the vote because she's irrelevant.
yeah.
So
perfect example.
by the new standards, do I leave the room for the conversation or just sit quietly?
Well, the previous one, which was replaced last week,
Right, that's what I'm saying. I think we did it right before.
I think the one last week said you shouldn't even sit with the group.
Right, now the new one says,
It doesn't have any reference to where
right,
you
if we had the
sit.
pickleball court tomorrow, then I would not discuss it, nor would I vote. Because of the family relationship there.
So does that mean that John and I shouldn't be on this board together?
It makes it tricky.
Together, or,
Because we are in a relationship.
my goodness, wait, what are you telling me?
No, but that's a good question. Like, how far does that?
That didn't come up in the training.
Yeah, I'm reading the transcript of the training, and that does seem, I think it does say that if there's conflict of interest or appearance of it, that you shouldn't participate in decision making. And it's interesting because it talks about which organizations. It is not clear that an advisory board is not making decisions, it's making advice. You could argue that making decisions about advice is making decisions, but I think we need to get clarification on that. And it does definitely say, let's say that we're bound by that. It does say that when you recuse yourself, you should not be party to the decision making. It doesn't necessarily say you can't participate in the conversation, and I think that would be among us to decide. I mean, but you can't vote.
So my understanding is that there's a state policy, which I think you're reading the training for the state
Oh,
policy.
is that what this?
And with I don't think there's a training for the town
Oh, I
policy.
see. Yeah.
And for the state policy, I'm guessing that this board is not a decision-making body and it does not apply. But the town has gone to this extra step, which they're allowed to do, saying it applies to any person election or statutory appointed to a town office, board, committee or commission.
Okay,
What about we invite Josh to our meeting and ask him this directly, like this conversation we're just having?
Would you ask Josh or would you take I guess our question a state question or is our question a town question?
There's no harm in asking Josh. He didn't answer the phone when I called him at 4:30.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, clearly they've written this in there.
Yeah.
Yes, this applies to us. That's fairly clear,
I think that's clear.
right? So what would your question to Josh be?
The exact question that you've been asking is like the clarity of, are we just an advisory board and it doesn't?
No, I think the town's comment strictly says it includes you, period.
So does that mean like John, I shouldn't be on this too?
I'm not making that connection.
Okay,
The connection I make has.
Well, I don't think that, at least my reading of this, my very quick reading of and you're right, this is the state one. Doesn't say anything, that's a conflict of interest, but I think that implication, let's put it on the table, the implication is because, some of the property, just like your example, if this stuff influences our land or something, let's say they were parking on our land. Then I think by our definition, we have to decide, is that grounds to? We wouldn't benefit, I'm reading this and it says, would you benefit by a decision? And the question would be, I think that's a legal fine line. Would we benefit? Would we, in some ways, and it seems to be sort of financial.
No, I think your quality of life would benefit if we're talking about parking
It would
in front of your house.
Right, I mean,
So clearly you benefit.
benefit
there's three
by
of
not
us,
having.
four of us. There's four of us on the board who've had ordinances in front of their homes. The work that we've done.
3 anyways.
Matt?
And there's examples in the training
Yeah,
where they say, someone could say, I don't want the property tax to go up. And it'll benefit me personally, but then it's gonna impact people throughout the town, so that doesn't count. But if it somehow is more focused on you, then it does, and perhaps there's some gray area in there.
There's also what they call de minimis, which is if the benefit or harm, it says benefit, the benefit to you is so minimal that you don't have to recuse yourself. But I don't know where this would fit. You know, if we were saying, oh, that was gonna hurt our property value, we would probably have to recuse ourselves. I don't know, but I think that there's two decisions. One is, so I think you're right, this definitely applies based on Duncan's words, this does apply to advisory committees. So the question would be, you know, is the nature of our, since we're talking, I think we're talking specifically about ours, is the nature of that require us to recuse ourselves? And if it does, it doesn't say, I don't see anything that says you can't participate, but you can't participate in the decision, you can't participate in the voting. I guess it would be up to you guys if, you know, I believe I could still participate even if I couldn't
The
vote.
yellow is what I'm.
What is it?
I'm gonna read it out since we're on video.
Yes, it says recusal, part B, part 1, subpart 1. If a municipal officer is confronted with a conflict of interest or the appearance of one, the officer shall immediately recuse themselves from this matter, except as otherwise provided in subdivisions 2 and 5. And there's a lot of verbiage about that, of this subsection, and not take further action on the matter or participate in any way to influence the decision regarding the matter. After a recusal, an officer may still take action on the matter if the officer's party is defined. Oh. Okay, after recusal, an officer may still take action on the matter if the officer's party is defined by 24 VSA statute 1201 in a contested hearing or litigation. I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
I think that's subject to interpretation, but I understand your not take further action and participate any way to act or influence.
No, I can see how you,
Lobby.
Yeah, I can see how that,
I can see how you look at that and say. You refute yourself from discussion or vote. I mean, if that's influencing the decision, then you could not contribute.
yeah, I mean, my interpretation, we're not saying if it's a good rule or not. Either the state or the town level, is that if there's parking in front of your house, and it's saying we shouldn't participate in the discussion, which in a way hobbles our committee.
So that's
But
where
someone else knows far more than I do, but.
that's why I think it would be useful to have Josh to consult Josh.
Yeah,
But I would say, I understand that interpretation, and that might be the case. You may say exactly that.
Be curious to know what the other committees are, how they interpret what we're doing. I mean, we got 60, 80, 100 of us, or whatever, trying to interpret this.
yeah.
Yeah.
And family and property links deeply, yeah.
and the pickleball, all that, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that was my example of, I thought I did that right,
Yeah,
and I did. But as of last week, that would no longer be correct.
Yeah.
I would say,
Because it
because
should have been part of the conversations, I guess.
because Nisi is your sister-in-law, or because?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think it has more, I didn't see anything in either of those that said about your, whether it related to you. I think that would, my own view is that the impact of that either way has such little impact on you that you're unlikely to act inappropriately to put it one way or the other. So
Right,
that's
I
the
think that,
unanimous-
but I do think that's clearly the appearance of impropriety. You know, my wife was
I see.
presenting it as opposed to my sister
I
or to
see,
my
I see.
sister-in-law or whatever, then it's just as easy just to keep your hands clean and say,
I mean, I would say we should talk to Josh and you will do what the thing says.
Yeah, I'd like it to find out a little bit and.
how do you want to pursue this, John? You seem to put a lot more effort into this than I have, certainly.
Well, I'm fine with talking with Josh, and we all have the opportunity to see how rapidly the State Ethics Commission responds to any question, which I believe any one of us is allowed to enter. If there's stuff about Cochran Road or Dugway Road tonight, I guess we'll have to make decisions with limited information.
So let's go back. So I think that in the case of the stuff we did on Dugway Road, and I know those situations are quite different, but I think, well, first of all, I think it was really good that we had input from Chuck and Matt on that. But in this new, that they were at, everybody, that was all completely fine because this now, that wasn't in effect. Would you imagine that you would have to recuse yourself if we were having those conversations today? It seems to me to be quite similar.
I would appeal to the group. That if we were having discussing that was in front of my house or about my property, that I would recuse myself from. If we're talking about adding parking down at Aldrich's Tree Farm or something, then I would probably feel comfortable taking part in the conversation. But if you guys had a problem with that, I would.
So I think that's why
Respect.
it would be good to ask Josh, you know, is it a quarter mile, is it a half a mile? I mean, I think that that's a very interesting.
What do you think?
I
Use
I
that.
think there could be a difference between the parking across from your house and the parking at the Huntington River Bridge. There might be people that are, I don't know if it matters what I think.
It does.
It does.
It does
I my interpretation would be that you would abstain from
Any
the parking across from your house, and then I'm less clear on the other stuff. And Diane, I have on my phone the text back from 2.5 years ago, where I understood that your plan was to abstain from the vote, but not abstain from the discussion.
So
The way in which
there's
you're
no parking in front of our house.
across the street.
Yeah.
Across the street.
It's in front
Yeah.
of our
Yeah.
other neighbor's house.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah,
So, but you don't have to stick with anything that was discussed 2.5 years ago, the next, or in the present, yeah,
I would.
So for the,
Yeah,
until we clarify,
yeah.
I will not take part in the discussion on Dugway Road.
and I think we ought to bring this up and because of the ambiguity of, you know, things like that are a matter of degree, it would be, I think we'd be doing Josh a service to have them think about that. Because I think that the language there, because if it's interpreted, you know, if it's left up to interpretation, whose interpretation, you know?
I would like boundaries. I'd like to
I would-
know,
yeah, I would like to
I'd like to
know.
know what and how and just move
And-
forward with this.
And I understand that at some
Yeah.
point, if you're directly affected, you should recuse yourself. The question is what. So I think we should have that discussion. And I understand that it might apply to this.
I can see this becoming a weekly conversation with Josh
Really?
to clarify, absolutely. To clarify every time we talk about a parking thing on Dugway Road or something to do with East Cochran Road or something. Or something to do with Route 2 or whatever. I mean, I could see that. Some people would think that you should refuse yourself in the conversation, and some people say, oh, it's not that close, it's nebulous. We're saying in front of your house, you can't comment, but 100 yards from your house, maybe you should comment. And
I think that we would never want to put him in a position to say on every instance, but I think if he could get to a point of what would a reasonable person think? You know, if we can come up with a criteria so we can judge, I don't think we would have to go back to him.
And I, having sat through the YouTube video,
We should all do, yeah.
believe that the policy Duncan sent us is mostly word for word is the same as the state policy with some addendums. And the training they tell us to take is the state training. So it could be the parts that are the same, Josh would render an opinion, but say ultimately, this part is a state policy. I don't know he'd say that, but that's.
Yeah. And I think working through this to figure out would be helpful,
There's a
not
lot.
just for our candidates,
Yeah,
but,
And the committee deliberately and the select board sought out people that lived in the affected area. So it's a problem by design in some sense.
Right. And I think, I would say, in general, that has worked out well. It certainly worked out well at Dugway, and I think if you look at Cochran Road, you know, over the last 5 years, then things that we have tried, you know, like adding a whole bunch of new, you know, good parking with the land trust, and to see how that did work, and then eventually didn't work, and you know, so I think having people who have a horse in the game is a good thing, as long as they do it in good spirit. But I think this does change it, so I understand the difference between the state minus some addendums is who it applies to, right? So this applies to. I think it'd be worth having a conversation. I think we all should watch the YouTube as well.
I think what I see in this is that the fact that we shouldn't vote on things that directly affect us hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is whether you can take part in the discussion to influence that vote. And that to me, that's huge. Because last time we talked about parking on East Cochran Road, you guys couldn't vote, but you chatted a lot.
So my question would be on that is, I think that, well, that's what we need to ask. You know, should we not put you in the position to have to hear if we have dissenting views or not? Or would you be able to make your own decisions based on that? I mean, we're not gonna be combative
well, we have,
or disruptive.
we have enough in our group that we could always still have a quorum of 3, and then we could just meet separately. You know, like we're gonna discuss Cochran Road, and
You could
that's,
step out.
we could step out if that's what the policy is for.
We'll do whatever we're supposed to do.
I think we all want to do whatever we're
Yeah.
supposed to do. I think that's, I just think there's a couple of gray lines I'd like to know from our town, how to approach and work within those lines. Because it does bring up, if we had this a couple of years ago, all the ordinances in front of all of our homes, we're like, well, you can't really start that conversation.
Trails and recreation, I think a lot of. I think this would come up in a bunch of different.
Yeah.
It does make it, you know, as I look at this, you do think maybe this committee isn't for me. You know, in other words, if you know, I joined this because I had a finger on the pulse of what was going on in Dugway Road. I think I had some logical solutions for it. At the same time, I thought I was level-headed enough to look into all these other things going on. But you know, clearly the driving force is trying to get Dugway Road straightened out, and if people who live on Dugway Road can't comment on Dugway Road, or people who live on East Cochran Road or whatever, I mean, if I can't I would, like I said, I would recuse myself from anything in front of my house or that would even appear to directly affect me. But I ought to be able to chat about Aldrich's, I ought to be able to chat about some of these other things. But
So just to, if we go back to what was Keith's, what was the group that did the piece of work that was recommending?
Or there,
The Chittenden County Planning
And there
Commission.
was a lot of good work in that. Would we? Is it okay for me to speculate? I mean, would we be able
I think we
to?
should get these things clarified. We're a bit over our agenda time.
Yes, so perhaps
And
we
rather
could
than
comment
keep,
on one,
rather than
not the
keep
other.
stirring
Yeah.
this without any decisions that I feel like any of us are here to make.
would anyone agree with the motion that we close the meeting until we figure this out?
We could talk about Checker House parking.
Good point. We could sneak a couple things, but I'm comfortable.
I would say that's a good idea, and I think also that, I don't know if it needs a, so are you making a motion?
Well,
So I would
he's-
make a motion that we focus the rest of the meeting on Checker House, approval of minutes and topics for the next meeting.
I second that.
I agree.
I
Wasn't expecting this, but I would agree.
I don't think with this hanging over
I
ourselves.
agree,
Yeah.
and I think I want to second John, so I didn't expect this either, and
But to me-
talking
To
this
me, it's
out.
logical.
Yeah, I like that, it is the logic of that, yeah.
Honestly, I mean. We don't wanna put you all in that position either, so if we get clarity on that,
It's on all these topics, John,
So
Dugway,
we-
birds, Cochran,
would we, I don't know if it needs a motion, but we should all. The rest of us should do either Jim and watch the training,
watch the train.
the training.
The YouTube, and I haven't submitted it formally to Duncan, but that there's a way you can take the training and get credit for it, which I.
And we all, the letter states that we are all obliged to do this, and we have until, was it June or something?
Yeah,
We've
quite a
I think
bit of
the-
got quite a bit of time to
I
do
think the
it.
Vermont League of Cities and Towns has some side chats going on about this as well, which would not surprise me.
So I think we should all do what we've already been asked to do, read it.
Yeah.
I think that we should get Josh to weigh in on particulars here, with a very specific set of particulars. But I also don't think that we should use that as a guideline, so we don't have to keep coming back. I think it would be. I think it'd be good to ask him for sort of a clear guideline, but not go back to him on every issue. And then I think we'll abide by it.
And
Or as Chuck said, maybe we're done. Somebody's,
That also might be a solution,
So,
but we wouldn't be doing it in anger.
oh, no,
no, it's just to do the right thing.
Do it.
So if we move on to, are we ready to move
Okay,
on?
yeah,
to
so that was-
Checker House?
Yeah, so let's, we're now moving to
are we
the,
gonna,
yeah.
is anyone gonna reach out to Josh from PAC?
I will ask him,
Well,
and others, I don't think there's any harm in any one of us, because it affects each of us personally.
Yeah.
But I tried to call him this afternoon, but we'll ask him, I guess. How do we know if we have a conflict of interest in areas where we live near parking, I guess, and how close do we have to live near the parking? And if we decide we have a conflict of interest, what can we and can we not do? Does that summarize?
I think that's so great.
And do we want to invite him to our next meeting, or is just that answer all we need?
And when is our next meeting too?
Well,
Or-
That's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, we're gonna have a chat about that. So first of all, John,
Mhm.
appreciate you grabbing the bull by the horns on this. You
Yeah.
obviously dove into this deeper than the rest of us and came well prepared, and I appreciate that. And thank you for following up with Josh as well.
so does that mean you're gonna you'll write the letter to him?
I was gonna call him. Let's start by calling him. Is that okay?
Whatever you wanna do.
Whatever.
Without-
Work for me, absolutely.
What's that?
Yeah, call him, contact him.
Yeah.
I will contact Josh and ask him the questions of
Click.
where does it apply? And then there was also a question of distance, among other things, and if it applies, what can we do and what we can't do? And then, I guess if you were a select board member, you're clearly covered by the state policy. And so then you have a clear channel into the State Board of Ethics. We aren't covered directly by the state policy. Maybe what would a select board member do in this situation? But I'll start with Josh and not wait till the next meeting to get back to you.
That would affect our next agenda.
Yeah, I think we're gonna finish up with those comments, those conversations.
Speaking of agenda, I think as a point of order, because the Checkered House comes next and then the discussion of the Cochran Road corridor study. Is there anything we can talk about the Cochran Road corridor study without stepping in the same thing?
No, we
No, we
can't discuss that.
We can't.
Okay.
Can I say a factual thing?
Sure.
That I spoke with Keith about his disagreement with Tyler about parking suggested in the Cochran Road study. You can tell me if this is getting to.
What we want from that,
So you're moving on to this for my minutes.
which is,
You're moving on to the discussion of Cochran Road corridor study.
Oh, should we then go to Checkered House
I think
next?
we should drop, no offense, I think we should just drop all this conversation except the Checkered House.
Yeah,
because-
but fair enough.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
Because
right.
until we find the answers,
Right.
okay,
because if we have to exclude, recluse ourselves.
And behind the scenes, I'm thinking we should meet sooner rather than later again.
Okay, yeah.
so for the point of the recording, we are going to table the discussions of East Cochran Road and the discussion of Cochran Road corridor study, which moves us to the preparation for summer 2025 Checker House parking area.
Correct.
We are exactly on time for the preparation for the start.
Yeah.
I told John in the email that we were gonna talk the ethics thing to death because that was more important than the rest of these things, which are pretty much maintenance. So preparation for Checker House parking. So looking at a laundry list here, we need to let Pete know that we need to have that open on May 15th according to our state contract. Judging by the way the grass was left last year, it needs to probably get mowed before May 15th. I'd like to start a longer term conversation with him with some signage that I proposed before. It says seasonal parking May 15th to November 15th. It would be a permanent sign so people kind of know why they can't park there and when they can park there. I don't know. Last time we asked for funding for something, we were kind of shot down because the coffers were not very full. I don't know that we've even applied for our FEMA money from the last set of floods yet, so I'm not sure that we're gonna get very well received for money, signed money, but maybe we can find a clever way to put a QR code up there or something.
Yeah, I will, just in the course of doing the other thing, I'll research weatherproof door stuff. We do that all the time, we do decals.
Yeah.
For everyone, so.
You're continuing it and the pattern for the stakes again, was Pete do that?
That's a P thing now, as far as I'm concerned.
And you,
I suspect the town will reach out to me or the state will reach out to me for
for what?
a seasonal meeting, an annual meeting for the 111 permit approval. In which case I will let everybody know when that is, but
And just because I wasn't listening carefully, Pete's gonna handle the stakes at the Checkered House Bridge?
I don't think that stuff is really in our wheelhouse.
Oh, okay,
But
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
we just.
Mhm.
If we start doing that, I think we'll create full-time maintenance
Yeah,
job for
okay.
ourselves.
Like you putting the road on.
yeah, I don't know.
Very nice.
We're trying to,
The best
Yeah.
rope line in the
Yeah.
town.
trying to avoid that again,
Okay.
yeah.
I will reach out to V-Trans and see if we're gonna have a permit approval meeting. Maybe because we have a 5-year contract now, we don't have to do that annually anymore. So I will let everybody know how that turns out.
Chuck, are you handling this whole thing? Do you want help since none of us have anything else to do?
This is pretty much a phone call.
Okay.
Do we have any other, to talk about on the Checker House parking?
The only other thing I would consider at Checker House, if we got into the world of signage. Would be some kind of a sign about littering and fines and stuff like that, because at the end of the year, the place is a pigsty. It's really, really bad. So we should try to remind people. I don't think we can get to the point where we would. The town kind of frowns on the idea of having trash barrels that need to get picked up and maintained and all that stuff, and I totally get that. But be good to kind of remind people that they're privileged to park there, not a right, you should pick up after yourself.
So that would be under the signage possibility.
I'll make a note, yeah.
Sorry if I can't remember his name, the gentleman biking guy who's been helping you,
Who's that now?
the biker who helps you.
Yep, Giles, Mary Giles, is
Yeah,
it?
is that it, who you
Very
talked
close.
to?
Not to be confused with Tyler Merritt.
Oh, wow.
Probably true,
That's weird.
probably true, yeah.
Yeah,
At least we used to nurse.
I wonder if he can help with the cleanup reminder.
It's a good idea. I'll drop him a note as well, reminding him that the opening is gonna be May 15th, because he'll be chomping to bed. And remind him also that anything we can do to have people pick up after themselves is a plus. Okay,
Right,
Ready to move on?
I think we're on.
For a very short meeting. Okay, approval of the February 10th, 2025 minutes.
I make a motion, we approve them as submitted.
my second. I read them and they're, I don't have,
All in favor? Aye.
all right,
Right.
thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for not being here tonight.
The lawyer we needed.
Well.
Volumes of minutes.
The redacted portion.
Okay,
So topics for next meeting. Now, I think that's.
well, let's talk about our next meeting. It's
I
probably,
think that will-
right?
Yeah,
We have if we waited a whole nother month, would we be on
I think-
schedule?
yeah, I don't think we can.
So so since we're the 24th, not the 31st, would be April 7th. Would be the next in 2 weeks. April 7th, is that a vacation for anybody? I don't know what,
I'm available.
What's the date?
April 7th.
Presumably, we would have your feedback from Josh.
Right,
Or you can
April 7th,
ask him if
that's
he
what-
wants to.
That's
join
2
us.
weeks.
okay, now, okay.
I think that should give us time to get our ducks in a row.
Am I
I
allowed
think
to send emails to all of us about this topic of conflict of interest?
Just administrative.
All
And then-
administrative. This
Yes.
is what I found
think-
out.
I think it's not so much that you send the email, it's as much that we can't reply,
Oh, okay.
or more than a got it, thank you.
Is that right?
That's
yeah.
exactly right.
We can't have a
We can
discussion,
say thank
or
you.
we can send
I
information.
think if you do findings and you tell us, then we would. get it.
Okay, I may send Josh an email and I can be clear enough that I may call him too, if that's
Yeah.
And you wouldn't copy us all on the discussion with Josh, because if there was back and forth, but. I have another.
So the next meeting is April 7th.
April 7th, providing we have to,
What, I think we should have it no matter what,
April 7th.
because we can bring Matt into our discussion, and we would have all had an opportunity to look at the ethics thing.
I'm gonna get these minutes out. Pretty quickly.
Okay.
Just A, so they're fresh in my mind, but B, so we can have a, be know what we're thinking about moving forward.
Can I ask just for a mechanical question about, actually, no, I'm not gonna do that till we actually get the feedback. No worries.
Okay.
So topics for next meeting will clearly be this. Will
Yeah,
be the,
start that again.
code of ethics recusal. And I think it's, there'll be a general conversation about how we do it, and then there'll be a specific conversation about how we handle each kind of mode. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's, you know what, we used to put on, our agendas, and we touched it and we didn't touch it, is like any other thoughts, and, you know, I've been trying to like scratch my brain again for like other recreational parking areas, so I think it's always good to like, all right, let's walk this route one more time, or let's drive by this part one more time, if we thought about this, and that's how we came across the Checker House Bridge parking, so it's like we sort of looked at maps and stuff, so it kind of, it's early enough, April, whether it be the next meeting or the meeting after, we just sort of go, let's do a little brainstorming, just sort of like, maybe look around town, or maybe we could all look around town and bring some ideas.
We put that on the agenda quite a bit over the winter
Any other-
you know, where are we going? What are we doing? New projects, you know, and I think what you're thinking is
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
Yeah, what other?
Yeah.
What
new
other
projects.
I think another thing I'd like to talk about, which we've talked about it when it comes spring before, never really been very formal about it. It would be really interesting to mentally go through and for all of our areas, you know, figure out what we would like to observe. Is there anything we would specifically like to do in terms of figuring out usage or signage or things like that based on, let's hope we have a regular summer, because we had a regular
so,
winter.
you know,
Is there,
you've often brought up, you know, usage as being, you know, and we've just done some hiking in California, and there's all kinds of counters on all of their
Yeah.
trails. You know, maybe we'd like to look at that again, so
we
we
could
say,
borrow, we could borrow the counters, remember like the land trust got very interesting statistics on the buckets. Maybe we borrow their stuff, I don't know what we would wanna know. Maybe. I think that. Land trust. Has done work on Dugway once, but we might wanna know. Overrocker, we might wanna know, Bombardier Field, we might wanna do, you know, what other things might we wanna do? I think those database, experiments are good. You know? So, just to think about, you know.
I make a note to put that on the agenda if you want to do some homework on it.
trails people that you could just send out a note to one of the trails people, or do I know any of the trails people anymore? But just sort of say, hey, you guys do any counting on the trails? Just sort of curious, what's being used today? That might be a good thing for us to inquire before our next meetings.
John Carts, so, no, he's, see trails.
Trails, the Conservation Commission, I'm not
Well,
sure.
Andrews Forest is next door. They might be interested in, I'm just curious what we're using already in town. That might be
Yeah.
and
There's a
I think
list.
the tricky thing about parking that we've all found and acknowledged is that certain areas might be trails and these trails get used X number of times, but the parking and the suggested use or the expected use are not anywhere near the same. In other words, you can have good parking at that Gillette's Pond for skating and everybody parks there as runners. or whatever, so we never see that direct relationship between
Yeah.
purpose and you and actual use.
You know, the place right before the Huntington Bridge on Cochran Road is often used for runners. Which might be okay.
You know, the snowbanks are on,
But it is-
Dugway Road is heavily runners again.
Yeah, it is interesting that, I mean, the amount of parking is the only knob we have as a town. Knowing, is it enough, is it too much, is it inviting too much?
The members of the trail committee are right on the webpage, but
Yeah,
So, would I take the to-do to reach out to them and find out about maybe stats? So this is specifically about counting.
I'm just kind of, I don't. We, just, those are things that we sort of talked about before, okay. It'll just be good to tap in and see what everyone's doing. I know that Andrew's Forest is doing a lot of work with their agenda.
Does that mean?
The thing I'm gonna do this time is I try to send out the agendas early enough and I leave in the Word format so that we can adapt them when you get it. And then I encourage you to look at it and say, yeah, but what about this, and mark it up. And maybe I need to start getting agendas out 2 weeks at a time or whatever, and that way we have plenty of time to mark them up. I didn't mean to overlook John's previous suggestion. Just emails passing in the night kind of thing.
Charlotte's trails and parking seemed really closely linked together, so as when I'm there, I'm thinking, oh, they have a sign saying trail parking, and
Yeah,
they're have perhaps more resources than Richmond does financially, but yeah,
They don't make any trail parking only signs or anything like that, do
I
they?
didn't see that.
Okay, no, I mean, that makes sense, but I've always kind of been threatening, but
Yeah,
thought that. You know, having spots specifically for the intended purpose wouldn't hurt,
Yeah.
but it's hard not to be negative. All right,
Neat. You done?
all right, so, topic for next meeting, and then I think if there's nothing else, this was a very, well, not that crazy short, but it was short. So
All right, so I
move that we.
Okay.
I move that we adjourn.
okay, I'll second.
in favor, aye.
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 Yes.
I'm stopping the recording.